It's not that I don't want to produce my products in the USA or that I haven't tried. The first problem with a lot of small businesses trying to get their goods produced in the USA comes down to simple math. So let's go through that. If I have 10,000 units of something that I want to purchase, and let's assume that I can get 10,000 units either from China or from the USA, let's break down some simple math. We've got raw materials, we've got cost of labor, and we have profit built into our supplier that they need to make when they're selling the goods to me. Okay? Now, keep in mind this just takes into account my business and what I sell. All small businesses will be different. All goods will have different cost structures, but I'm just using this as an example. In the USA, I can expect to spend about $1 per unit in just raw materials. Now, in China, that same raw material will be about 75 cents, okay, for every dollar. And something else to keep in mind that you haven't probably been made aware of is that a lot of times the raw materials are actually coming from China or some other country. So don't assume that because a product says it's made in the USA that everything that went into it was actually produced in the USA. So always keep that in mind. Now, the cost of labor in China, let's say that is about 75 cents per unit. Remember, we're talking per unit. In the USA, this cost would be closer to about $1.80. And that's because of the difference in wages in the USA compared to the wages in China. Yes, China is working on much lower wages, but that doesn't make them sweatshops. They're actually getting paid a fair wage. That's a whole nother video, okay? So let's keep that in mind. Now, we got to build in profit because the people who make these products for us have to profit on them as well. We're going to assume a profit margin of 30%. That's just for the goods, okay? So in China, that would be another 75 cents per unit, and in the US, that would be about $1.20 on that. So per unit cost for the same products, per unit cost would be about $2.25 in China, and in the US it would be about $4. Okay? Now, I have to get those goods to me. So in order to do that, if they're coming from China, I have to import. So the cost per unit to import will be about 25 cents per unit in this example. And in the US, it still costs money because we still have to ship it from whoever is making the product for me to my warehouse, okay? So that still costs some money. Let's just call that 10 cents a unit. It is a little bit cheaper to ship within the United States than coming across the sea. So that comes to about a per unit cost of $4.10 compared to cost in China of about $2.50, okay? Now, that doesn't sound too bad, does it? You're like, okay, so you only have to make up for a difference of about $1.60 per unit, not a big deal. Well, think about this. I'm buying 10,000 units, right? So a small business like me has to come up with $41,000. That's just to buy my first initial stock, 10,000 units. And if you think, oh, we'll just buy fewer units, that's a whole other problem. Okay, so just stick with me here. 25,000 is what you would need to come up with if you're buying from China. Now, this is very simplified. Obviously, it doesn't take everything into account, but this is just to produce a product and get it sent to me, okay? There's so much more to keep in mind. But in this case, as a small business, if I want to get just the same number of units shipped to me and produced for me, I have to come up with 1.5 times as much money in the initial. And God forbid that I invest in something that doesn't sell really quickly or people don't love. Now I'm out $41,000 instead of $25,000. So there's a lot to consider. Don't just assume that because, you know, it's made in the USA that small businesses should be able to do that. It's not that simple. It really is more expensive, okay? Now, you might be thinking, oh, wow, $2.25, that's really cheap. $4 is still really inexpensive. $4.10 is still really inexpensive. You should be able to do that as a small business. Well, not only do you have to consider the initial investment, but you also have to consider the fact that when I get my particular product made in the USA, none of this cost includes the cost of packaging. It doesn't include the cost of putting inserts into the boxes, custom boxes with all of my branding on it. It does not include any extra labor to package these up nicely and put them into individual units so I can send them out. This is literally just the cost to blow mold the bottles. And this isn't my numbers necessarily. These are example numbers, but relative to what it would cost getting it from China per unit, I can't even get all of the services provided for me that I would get buying from China. So it was a huge consideration as well, okay? Now, I grew up with the same saying being told to me that you probably grew up with. What is all this stuff from China? Everything's made in China now. Chinese stuff is junk. I'm just trying to help you be more informed with hard facts, okay? Hard facts and numbers. That's all we're doing here. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm not trying to even sell you on getting things made in China. I'm just trying to tell you, I worked in my basement doing it myself for about 2 years before I offshored to China. And what I found was that I just couldn't get everything done in the USA that I could get done in China. Okay, so keep that in mind when we're going through this video. So that is just the raw materials to get to me, all right? And if you're thinking, wow, that's great, that's really not too bad. If you sell something for $25 or $30 that you got made for $4, there's still a lot of profit in that. Aha, but don't forget, if I take this $44.10 and I have to now ship all those products to somebody who's going to package them up for me, if I don't want to live in my basement for the next 30 years, which I don't, I have to find somebody who will label or print the bottles that I want to be printed or labeled. Then I have to have somebody who will package everything up because there aren't any suppliers who do all of those things in the US. And then I have to ship those all of these things to each one of those third-party providers, and then I got to ship them back to myself when they're finished. By the time I'm done here, this $4.10 a unit comes closer to about $15 a unit. I would never be able to sell. I would have to triple my price on my products if I wanted to get them made in the USA. Now, can it be done? I don't know, maybe. I mean, I've been trying for 7 years and I haven't been able to get the prices low enough in the US. And also logistically, it's just a pain in the neck. Who wants to have to make phone calls every few days to somebody to find out where your shipment is? I mean, one supplier to deal with is enough, trust me, trying to get the whole process done. But when you're dealing with 3 or 4 parties who are in the mix of getting your goods to you, it gets a lot more complicated. All right, so this is what we're starting with a simple math. Now, again, remember, we're assuming I could get the same 10,000 units from a USA supplier that I can from a Chinese supplier. And I'm here to tell you that I cannot. I can't actually buy US goods in the minimum order quantities that I need as a small business. If I want to buy from the US, I have to buy from a wholesaler. And if you're not familiar what wholesale is when a intermediate party buys directly from the manufacturer, puts items on their shelves, and sells to small businesses so that they take a little markup and I'm going to have to buy at a higher price than I would if I were to buy directly from the manufacturer. So why would I have to do that? Well, because the manufacturers in the US, when I researched it last a few years ago, required a 200,000 unit minimum. okay? And when we say 200,000 units, I mean 200,000 of the same thing with the same color and the same size and the same exact thing. So I couldn't have 200,000 sets of shampoo, conditioner, and body wash bottles. I would have to have 200,000 shampoo bottles, 200,000 conditioner bottles, 200,000 body wash bottles, and then I'm stuck with those. Okay, so if you don't like them, if I did something that wasn't perfect in the process of designing those bottles, and you decided that you didn't like them, now I have 600,000 bottles I can do nothing with, and remember, that's at this price. So when I'm buying wholesale, price is much, much higher than this. They take a pretty big cut to wholesale, and it's still in bulk. I still have to do something with it. Okay, I still have to label it. I still have to package it. I still have to come up with custom packaging. I have to have somebody design it for me. All of these things have to happen from the beginning of the process to the end of the process. And I'm going to tell you a little secret you may not know. Even the U.S. suppliers who make the bottles, the manufacturers, they actually are getting a lot of their raw materials from China. And sometimes they're even getting the preforms. I don't have time to go through it in this video, but a plastic bottle that is blow molded starts out as a preform. So it's got air blown into the plastic to give it the threading. And then it has to go through a whole nother process to be blow molded. A lot of times the preforms are actually what's shipped into the USA and blow molded. And so the manufactured in the US bottles are actually just blow molded here. They're preformed in China. Again, I understand this is a lot of information. Just remember that you don't have to have every part of the process being done in the US to be called a US manufactured product. And also, we just don't have the capability to have all of the resources available in the United States in order to make sure that every part of the process from the beginning to the end is USA produced, okay? So it's really not, to me, not a big deal. I'm not ashamed of buying my goods in China. You know why? Because that old saying of all the stuff that comes from China is junk is not true. Whether a Chinese product is junk or not junk depends entirely on the designer who is hiring the Chinese manufacturer. If they have designed a piece of junk, then the Chinese manufacturer will create a piece of junk. But if you go through your quality review processes and you find a really great supplier and you make sure that you only consider your customer's best quality output, then you will not have junk that you're putting on the market. And every product goes through iterations. Sometimes the first thing you put out isn't your best, it can be improved because you get feedback from your customers that say, I didn't like this about it, or I didn't like that about it. Well, that's awesome. I would love to just keep improving. But if I've got to buy 200,000 of something at a $15, $20 per unit, how am I ever going to sell it to you? I would be out of business. Okay, so that's kind of the point of the math. You would be out of business if you had to buy everything from the USA. Now, you can split the process up between China and the USA. There are some products that can be entirely processed in the USA. A lot of times it is your pharmaceuticals, your topicals, ointments, things like that. That's why there are a lot of small businesses trying to jump into the pharmaceuticals and topicals game. If you've ever seen a video from an Amazon FBA seller who's trying to sell you a course on how to sell on Amazon, if you've ever seen any of those, a lot of times they're recommending that you go into, diet pills, nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals, topicals, creams, ointments. Well, for one, there's no real way to prove whether they're effective, but also a lot of the manufacturing can be done in the USA, but they're also very expensive. People are willing to pay a lot of money for those. So it gets very complicated. Okay, so math. The first reason why it's actually very difficult to compete with Chinese made goods. It's just simple math. The Chinese are not all underpaying their workers. They are not all sweatshops. My manufacturers are certified for paying fair wages. But, you know, China's living status is just lower than ours. It doesn't take as many US dollars for a Chinese person to live as it does for an American to live. So that's just simple math and living status, okay? So that's the first real problem with trying to get goods made in the USA. And a big portion of this is labor costs, okay? Now, the raw materials is comparable, a little bit more expensive in the US. Profit, really, as a percentage of the total, we're making the assumption that a Chinese company and a U.S. company are making the same percentage of profit. So, you know, we can't really be upset about a profit from a business. You can if you want to. It's just really hard for businesses to run without profit. That profit oftentimes gets reinvested not only in the people, but in new ideas, in cool gadgets, in salaries, in your time off, in your vacation time, in your health benefits that you don't value until you're self-employed and you realize how much health benefits cost, okay? So profit, they need profit. You can get mad about companies making profit if you want to, but we wouldn't have any businesses. We wouldn't have any goods. We wouldn't have any services if businesses weren't meant to make a profit, if they couldn't make a profit. Okay, so simple math. That is the first reason why it is very difficult to compete with goods made from China. The second reason is logistics. I touched on it before, but China has really figured out how to make their goods complete by the time they get here. And when I am doing it in my basement, it's not a problem. When I'm working in my basement, I can take all the raw materials, all the bottles that I want to, my product. I can package them, I can label them, okay? And I can get them shipped to Amazon, or I can get them shipped to you, the customer, if that's where I'm shipping it to. But if I'm actually not wanting to work in my basement for the rest of my life, and I don't, okay? I don't want to work in my basement for the rest of my life. I mean, if you begrudge me that, then we probably just aren't friends, okay? If you like working in your basement, great. I don't. I actually am trying to run a business here. So the difference between China and the U.S. in logistics is that in China, they take care of manufacturing. They take care of packaging. They take care of inserts. And because I have such a great supplier, my supplier also does design work on my packaging. They also do design for bottles, design for my actual products. So they'll help with product design. Okay? All of this, and they take care of shipping. They get it shipped. And they're such experts at it. Shipping is a big one, by the way. They're such experts at shipping that they get it all the way from China to me in the USA without me having to do anything except for pay them one fee, okay? I don't have to have my own importer. I don't have to hire somebody to handle all the logistics and fill out international paperwork. My supplier handles all of that for me, okay? And the good ones will. Now in the USA, here's what I can get done for my very first cost that I put up here. This is it. manufacturing. They won't do packaging. They won't do inserts. They don't help with design. You're on your own for that. They definitely are not helping you with product design. And as far as shipping goes, they'll ship it one. Okay, so I'll put a little bit of shipping down here because they will ship it to one location. Now, if I choose that location to be me, then I still have to send it somewhere to get inserts, to get it packaged, to help me design my custom packaging, to help me make sure that all of my pieces, parts fit together. I would be responsible for this myself. There aren't really any U.S. manufacturers. For small businesses, keep this in mind. I'm talking about small businesses. All of this stuff is possible if you're a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, okay? I'm talking about people who are trying to run a small business out of their home, out of a small office. They're selling goods, they're making goods. We're not talking about services, and we're not talking about giant corporations. These things are the big stopping points in the logistics. Because if I can only get this finished product shipped one place, I have to ship it to somebody who's going to package it. Then I have to buy inserts from somewhere. Let's just say Avery or Vistaprint. Buy those, design them myself, buy them, ship them to the packaging company, okay? Then they'll package it for me, and what are they going to do with it? Now they have to ship it back to me so that I can ship it out to either Amazon or you, the customer, okay? So that is a lot of shipping. Do you know how much shipping costs in the USA? Have you ever tried to ship a 25-pound carton that's about 20 inches in each direction? If you haven't, I'll tell you right now, it costs about $50, one carton. 10,000 units would fill about 500 cartons, okay? Times 500, that's a lot of money, right? $25,000, that's just to ship it one place for 10,000 units. Don't forget, I probably can't buy just 10,000 units, but assuming this is going under the assumption that I could. It would cost me $25,000 just to ship it to these guys. Then what's it going to cost me? Another $25,000 to ship it to me, okay? Now, technically, if you ship a large shipment that's about 500 cartons, you're going to get a slightly lower rate per carton because it's all shipping together. But even if you could get this down to 10,000, that's a lot of cost to add into your product costs so that you can send it out to your customers, all right? So logistics is number 2. Logistics between the U.S. and China is just very different. It's not set up to help small businesses in the U.S. In China, it is. They want our business. They have figured it out, okay? Now, the third problem that I did touch on earlier is volume. And volume is a big problem because while it's understandable that a big business would need to sell large volumes of things in order to make money. So I don't fault U.S. companies for needing to sell large volumes. What I am trying to explain to you is the hard, cold facts that volume impacts small businesses. In China, I can buy as few as 10,000, okay, of what I'm trying to order of the same color of a bottle, right? And I can buy as few as 10,000. I can have my own custom color for that number, for the 10,000, okay? I can have my own custom mold, which has embossed with my brand name, and I can have my own choice of pumps that go in the bottles. I can have my own choice of threading. I basically have my Chinese supplier create the molds for me. So when you pick up a Bottiful home bottle, you will see it says Bottiful Home on the bottom. You might not be able to see it really well, but that is what it says here, okay? Bottiful Home. And that is because I have these custom made in a custom mold. Now, that custom mold cost me about $800, okay, for my Chinese supplier. In the US, that would cost me about $5,000, just so you're aware. But I wouldn't even bother because I have to buy 200,000 units. 200,000 if I want my own custom color. Okay? That's from an actual manufacturer. That's their minimums. They may have gone down in the last couple of years. I don't know, but it's probably not going to be much less than 100,000, which is still way out of my ballpark. All right. Okay. Minimum 200,000 versus 10,000. This is reason number 3 is very challenging. It's for me to be able to meet the budget to get to 200,000 units. So my only other option is to buy wholesale. So I can buy actually much smaller units than 10,000 if I buy wholesale. Okay. I can buy cartons. But if I want to buy wholesale, let's say the bottles are about $4. We're still talking about $4 per unit. Okay. Without anything, with nothing. Okay. That's stock bottle color. It has somebody else's name embossed on the bottom instead of mine. I still have to buy pumps. I still have to put it in packaging. I still have to do everything myself. But let's just say I could get it for $4. I haven't checked in a while, so it's probably more than that. And then I could probably knock it down, let's see, to, let's just say I only wanted to buy like 500 units, okay? 500 units. In the USA, I could get, that's only if I decide to do wholesale. Okay. Then the risk isn't as big, but remember, I still have to go through all the iterations of pumps, inserts, packaging, design, logistics, sending everything where it needs to go, or I work in my basement. And those are the options. Or I hire somebody to work in my basement. Or I hire somebody and I rent out a warehouse somewhere and put them in there and have them do that. Well, guess what? That costs money too. And by the time I spend the money that it takes to buy these on wholesale, you know, the profit margin isn't really big enough for me to go rent places and hire people. And keep in mind that not everything sells equally as well. So you're taking chances wherever you invest your money. Small business is all about taking a chance and it's all about risk. But even the items you see in the big stores like your World Markets and your Targets and the Walmarts of the world, yes, those are big corporations and big conglomerates. They could afford to have a little bit more of the selection of their products made in the United States. But remember, every product you put on the shelf is a risk, okay? You walk into Target, how many bottles do you see for soap in their stores? You got ceramic bottles, glass bottles, plastic bottles, marble bottles, you got all kinds of bottles. And we're just taking bottles for example, but let's just say you have 15 different bottles, okay, on your shelf in Target. 15 bottle options. Now, how many of those bottles do you think are going to be your best sellers? I mean, with the odds of the way retail typically goes, you probably only have 4 that sell well, okay? And you probably only have 1 that is your best seller out of all 15 of those. So what do you do with the other 11 to 14 of them? Well, they sit on your shelves. They cost you space. They cost you labor. They cost money to sit on your shelves and not go anywhere. And if you're the Target merchandiser or the Walmart merchandiser, you're going through those shelves every so often, you know, going through your reports, figuring out what sells, what doesn't, and what doesn't gets taken off the shelves and replaced with new items that you think will sell better. And what do you think happens to the ones they take off the shelves? Well, I don't know if you saw my video from a couple days ago, but I walked into a Habitat for Humanity restore and there were some really surprising things in there. There were beautiful brand new lamps, stocks and stocks of them for only $15. Why? Because Walmart couldn't sell them anymore. I thought they were beautiful. If I had seen it in Walmart and I needed a lamp, I would have purchased them. But obviously, they were taking up space and didn't sell. Anything that doesn't sell gets thrifted out, gets given away. It's a lot of cost and investment that companies put in to developing a well-stocked approach to offering you options. And so I'm grateful I have options. I love having options. And I know it costs money to do that. I never begrudge a company for wanting to make profit because I know what happens to profit. Profit gets reinvested back into the company, back into the people who make the company. And I never begrudge a company for getting their goods produced in China because I have firsthand experience proving that it's not only less expensive, but it's also a lot of times better quality if you want it to be. It's really about the person who's ordering the item that is deciding what the quality is going to be like. And the logistics are done. They have figured it out. The Chinese suppliers have figured out how to help small American businesses get things produced, packaged, shipped, and designed and sent all the way to where they need to be. So that's 3 really big reasons that from firsthand experience I can tell you is why we get a lot of our goods produced in China. I really hope this was helpful. If you have any commentary on this, feel free to leave it in the comments below. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. If you have any questions about this, let me know. If you want me to follow up on some of those things that I said, that's for another video, let me know that. All right, I will see you in the next video.